Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Stickle. I'm also joined by my colleague Jim Patterson. Jim will be today's presenter and will be going over how to create a financial plan that aligns with your corporate strategy. This webinar is a new addition to our diverse library of project and portfolio management videos we have available on YouTube and our website. So if you enjoy this webinar, we welcome you to watch the other videos we have available there. And as always, I hope that today's presentation grants you some insight into the world of project and portfolio management and gets you excited for the new developments happening within the industry and here at OnePlan. Thank you again. I'll now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thank you, Robert, and welcome everybody. Financial planning and the financial dimension of project and portfolio management is an important one. And to have it aligned with your corporate strategy is an objective that we all need to strive for in today's marketplace in order to be relevant and to compete and make sure that we're spending money on the right things to get the right returns and value for our organizations. So let's start with some basics. Project portfolio management, there are financial aspects throughout all of the disciplines and the processes within that. PPM provides program and project management the capabilities they need to manage time, resources, skills, and budgets and dollars within those solutions so they can accomplish things that are needed and do them within financial constraints. And this is true very early on, whether we're in pipeline or demand management, where we have to do some preliminary estimating, possibly put in for capital investment approval, and actually see if it dovetails with a strategic plan to see if it's worthy of doing it all. On the resource management side of things, there could be just financial resources or dollars, or rates or costs associated with materials, supplies, infrastructure, and even people that factor into the overall cost structure of a project or a portfolio. And even on change control, when we make changes and request changes in projects, we generally have to understand what the cost impact is and justify that as to getting the change approved in moving forward with the project in your portfolio. And then for overall financial management, if we look at it in a broader context, we have to determine the value of the projects. What's the return of the value we're going to get as an organization? We have to establish financial controls to make sure that we don't overspend or keep things contained so that we can deliver them within a budget that we've established. We need to have progress measures as well. Older school and some industries are still using some earned value techniques, but more and more, there's other project financial techniques that people are using in order to understand whether they're staying on track and whether they can project finishing in a successful fashion from a financial dimension. And even in risk management, we have to determine when we assess risks and deal with those, what is the potential cost impact should that risk hit us? So once again, the message here is that at all levels, at the portfolio, the program, and the project, there is a financial dimension to almost everything we consider in this realm. So what is project financial and cost management? Well, it's definitely a key dimension of project constraints and performance measurement for your projects. In the prior versions of the project management body of knowledge, it was one of the 10 knowledge areas, which is now morphed into the 7th edition in other contexts. But even in scaled agile and lean portfolio management approaches, they don't ignore the idea of budgets in agile. It's budgets with guardrails and maybe budgeting at a different level that we're doing in that. So it's considered no matter what those approaches are as we do things in a more modern age. And financial management's intended to deliver planning cost management. So as we do original planning, whether it be annual operating plans, whether it be planning for an overall portfolio of projects before we even start those in demand, and then even estimating costs as we know more, and we have to detail out what it's really going to take to do those projects as we get closer to it. And then agreeing and determining on a budget so that we have a guidepost or a target for which we will manage towards in order to have that one dimension of success for our projects. And then ongoing as through the life of the project, we got to continually control those costs to make sure that we stay in line and we don't exceed what we thought we were going to do. Now, financial management process is really the process, an iterative process. You estimate costs, you develop a budget, and then you control spending. As changes happen, you have to reassess and assess and maybe replan and control based upon that reassessment. So the cost estimation is really the step where the project management organization or the project manager themselves works with others in the organization to estimate costs that's required to deliver everything, giving the best knowledge we have at that particular point in time. And you work your way into essentially a budget. And a budget is what our commitment is, and saying that this is what we're going to manage to, and maybe even what the sources of the funding are going to be, and help allocate those budget and use that as one of our targets. And then the spending control is really the process of making sure that we stay in alignment with that every step of the way, and make sure that early on we get views of any variations that might require us to do some adjustments or redirection in order to help reel this thing back into to occur under budget. Now, from a project financial management approach, at a high level, there's the top-down financials, where maybe at a project or a program level, we budget and allocate at that level. And maybe we do things with financial categories and cost types at that level. You know, usually there's some time-phase financial values, maybe by month or by quarter. And we'd incorporate labor and non-labor costs to get a complete picture of that top-down financial. But this may not have, you know, gory line item detail. And this might be something that's used early on as we're putting a business case together or justifying a new project. Now, what you may supplement that with, and that might be the only level of detail you do for your projects, but some folks want to supplement that with bottoms-up financials. And this is when you start getting detailed project plans that are maybe cost-based or task-based, and actually having costs associated with those individual tasks or elements or phases in your project plan, and have those assignments of cost and or resources drive rates at that lower level that roll up through the project and the program and portfolio. And this type of approach does require maintenance of data at a much more granular level of detail. And not all organizations need to, or are desirous, or feel that they have the wherewithal to establish or maintain reliable data at that level of detail. But for some, it's a necessity. Now, many use a combined approach where they use the top-down approach very early in the process, as I said, as we are in the early stages and maybe we don't have a detailed plan in place, and then use bottoms up when they know more and have more detail, and potentially maybe use that bottoms up plan to try to manage it into that overall top down constraint or budget that we put in place in the first place. So those are some of the different approaches. Now, a complete solution would have like a whole integrated logical approach for doing all this, and a single source of truth for portfolio planning and budgeting, so that with things like an annual operating plan, the ability to put in requests and approvals for individual initiatives that come through, the capital budgeting, because capital dollars are scarce and sometimes treated judiciously. Make sure that capital budgeting happens, and we get the right CapEx approvals for the things that we think we're going to embark upon. And then once we embark upon those things, the forecasting and the reforecasting based upon the situation on the ground during the life cycle of a project is also an aspect of this. And then ongoing, we're forecasting, tracking, looking at variances and reporting and readjusting through the entire life cycle. So in this modern age, traditional PPM or project and portfolio management is moving more towards strategic project and portfolio management, commonly referred to as SPM. And in strategic portfolio management, you have it really is an evolution. It's not a replacement of what we've been doing in the past. The things we've been doing in the past have gotten us pretty far and advanced organizations into more maturity in that realm. But SPM is considering more different dimensions and even strategic execution management. And in that case, we have strategies which leadership is basically giving to us and saying, this is where we want the organization to go. This is what we want the organization to achieve. These are the outcomes we desire for the organization. And then we have the execution pieces. And this is where the project portfolio comes in, where the initiatives are. And these execution leaders, the PMOs, the project and program managers, et cetera, they need to have initiatives that align with leadership's vision, such that we are working on the right things that help us achieve the organization's goals as a whole, and that we're all rowing in the same direction. And then there's other dimensions in here in the realms of things like enterprise architecture and technology, where there are systems and assets we have within our organizations that need to be at least considered or possibly adjusted or modernized or updated to achieve the strategies that the business leaders want, and for the execution leaders to succeed in their projects. So once again, to look at this holistically in a modern age, especially in digital organizations, we need to move towards, at least at some level, considering all these different dimensions. Now, within that overall approach of SPM, there's different methodologies for execution being used. Agile is growing. People are becoming more and more agile, but waterfall is still widely used depending on the nature of the work and the type of organization you have. And there's hybrids of all that. So this SPM concept is definitely applicable regardless of where you're at with these different methodologies or mix of methodologies that you're using. So you have to ask yourself, where are you now and who do you want to be? Traditional project and portfolio management in the green on the right-hand side was more of a waterfallish type of approach with more traditional governance models. And as organizations maybe strive in this modern age to become more agile, maybe even fully agile, they may strive to get all the way to the left-hand side in the dark blue where there's agile portfolio management, or maybe even augment that with full strategic portfolio management concepts. The thing is, change doesn't come quickly, and an agile transformation journey can take years. So as you go through that process, you may find yourself for an extended period of time in this adaptive portfolio management realm where you have a hybrid of methodologies and tools and other approaches with multiple portfolios that you're trying to manage. Now, the analysts are saying that many organizations, or most organizations, find themselves ending up in an adaptive state overall. But regardless of where you're at, our message here to you today is that one plan has the capabilities to support you no matter where you're at in this transformation journey. So the key today is that with these variations of methodologies and approaches, teams need to execute how they need to in order to, do the types of work that they need. Some are using more agile approaches in things like software development and product development, or maybe more infrastructure and type of construction and other types of projects. Maybe there's in facilities that are more waterfall types of projects, and maybe some projects have some combination of both. So those methodologies in one plan will allow you to support those things. Now, one plan can do all that within and of itself, but you may already be committed to some other tools in execution, things like Azure DevOps for Agile, Microsoft Project for Waterfall, Jira for for some Agile stuff, whatever it might be. And you need to have the flexibility to feed these all into a holistic portfolio and roll those up to the different levels that make sense, whether they be strategic, whether they be portfolio based, or whether it be more program oriented. The key is to give leadership the visibility it needs to track the investments and how they're performing, and give teams the things that they need to be effective. Now, even if organizations get all the way over, or mostly over to the left in that fully agile approach, there's still a need for what we're doing here today with one plan. Now, the portfolio levels might be different in things like value streams for continuous delivery, and maybe strategic themes, but the teams might be talking in different language than leadership. Teams might be looking at agile terms like burn-ups and burn-downs and velocity charts to determine where they're at and how they're doing, where leadership still maybe wants the language of the business, something more financial oriented, part of the topic we're here about today. And maybe you want to know things about more metrics and achieving things on milestones and when things are going to get delivered. And one plan is designed to meet the needs of both of those constituencies. Now, one plan as a solution is really about what we're talking about here today, connecting strategy to execution and all the dimensions in between. In this case, I'm showing one plan at the top of the pyramid here as a portfolio, and could be feeding in other tools for planning, though one plan does not need that. But we have a lot of organizations in this Microsoft world, and we definitely support the Microsoft ecosystem strongly. Project for the Web could be a planning tool, which is their new simplified planning tool. Project Professional, the old desktop Microsoft project, and Azure DevOps. Jira in a non-Microsoft fashion is another popular one that feeds in as well. Now, it all starts with a strategy if we're going to do this right in a strategic portfolio management approach. So we have to maybe establish a strategic plan that leadership would execute on and that have metrics on the progress. And that's done in this case by, one method can be done. This isn't the only way we can do it, but the objectives and key results are OKR's approach, where the objective is the individual strategy. The key results are the tangible measures that we want to measure to see if we're making tangible progress towards achieving that objective that we need to have. And leadership can actually use one plan to not only document the plan, put it in place, but also use it to track and execute on that plan to see it to fruition. Now, to do things correctly, that strategic plan in and of itself is great, but what are we doing as an organization to fulfill or achieve those outcomes? This is where one plan's execution tools, where a portfolio of projects and initiatives and all the dimensions of things that need to be done within that needs to be incorporated, and one plan does that in a complete fashion. Now, not either of those things should be done in isolation. They should be done in alignment and synchronization with one another. Those strategies should drive what it is we decide to do as an organization from initiatives, and the things that we're doing as an organization on the execution side should support the fulfillment of the objectives and the key results that leadership has outlined. Now, the one plan individual capabilities within the solution, that we'll talk about some of them today, is overall flexible portfolio planning, whether it be traditional views of portfolios, whether it be more agile types of boards for the portfolio management, or whether it's roadmaps for those types of views and perspectives on when things are going to get delivered, as well as we're going to talk about some what if modeling today. We have the resource capacity planning, which can be consistently done regardless of the methodology you're using at the execution level. And then our focus today on financial planning is integral into what one plan does. Now, from an execution perspective, whether it be waterfall work plans on the left-hand side, or more agile plans, which are backlogs maybe that are built out in one plan, and maybe even the boards and the sprint plans that you put in place in there as well, that can all be done within one plan itself. But if you have other popular tools that are feeding into waterfall or agile plans, we support those through our integration platform. That could be Project or Azure DevOps or Jira, etc. The idea is to get everything into a holistic portfolio management solution so that you can get consistent status reporting without having a lot of manual intervention and lifting every reporting period. Now, the team members, to get those feed in, the updates fed in on a more streamlined basis, to have a single place for them to go to status all work they've been assigned across all projects and all types of work. Insights for them, which is like a homepage to determine what requires their attention or what might be falling off track. And even timesheets, if you have to collect timesheets for purposes of billing, chargebacks, or even for capitalization of the dollars within here. That's all within one plan itself. Now, the financial planner, if we drill into that more, which is the focus today, we do integrate the concept of a portfolio, which has roll-ups of portfolio costs and dollars and financial information at the portfolio level. But that is driven by details in more detailed financial plans, which are time phased, categorized, different cost types, etc. And being able to put a cost structure in place that reflects the way that you look at costs, or maybe even the way you'd like to look at costs, to have it integrate with your financial system as well. And the key is to have the details you need, but have it summarized up to a portfolio level for leadership in the way that they want to see it as well. So financial planning, we can actually have labor costs that are also based on resource capacity planning. That resource capacity planning tool we have in there, we may go to great lengths to put a resource capacity plan in together and make the resource commitments, and those resources may have rates associated with them. To have that automatically feed in or be imported into the financial plan saves a step and lets that resource plan speak for the labor portion of what you're doing, so that you only have to put into the financial plan or maybe the non-labor costs that you might want to look at. And we also might have different, what we call cost types. There may be a budget, there may be a revised forecast, there may be actuals, there may be revenue or benefits that you're looking to track as well. And the key is this can be done very early on as you're justifying a project, and carry that forward to what you're going to manage when it becomes an active project as well. And this financial planner includes the following capabilities. It has financial visibility across multiple portfolios, which you can structure multiple portfolios within an instance of one plan. It details at multiple levels. It time phased the costs. It allows you to have financial reporting and look at within the context of a portfolio, does the cost in that portfolio fit within a budget like we see in the graphic over to the right? There's financial reporting that we have that comes out of that. There's automatically fed by these financial plans, as well as right within one plan itself, we have a pivot analysis capability, much like you would do with pivot tables within Excel, for example, or a spreadsheet, but do it right there within the context of the solution to get the analysis and the slices that you would like to have it. And on the what if scenario side of things, we've always had a what if scenario capability within the portfolio management capability of one plan. And this allowed us to, put a prioritization scheme in place, select or deselect projects, allow us to delay projects in a what if mode, and be able to save scenarios of different alternatives that we might have, so we can evaluate and choose them in collaboration with others. And even look at things like financial heat maps below, like we see here about when we're over and under budget and which time periods, and setting up different budgets and different targets. And this was our first iteration of this, and that's what we have here today. But what I'm excited to announce is that we have now implemented a new one-plan modeler that's actually going to take what-if scenario modeling to another level. It allows us to capture and save different scenario models outside of the portfolio. So we have a new capability that's going to allow you to have different models where you select different projects. Maybe you have different models for different business units or departments or whatever it might be, and apply targeted constraints for things like cost and benefits and resource effort, et cetera, and be able to do scenarios and then view initiatives and look above the line, below the line, what makes it in and what makes it out based on your priorities and your criteria. And then ultimately being able to have a comparison of scenarios so that we do multiple scenarios and look at the alternatives and how they compare to one another as we're trying to make choices as to what the best scenario or best course of action is for us. You could even take a look at it, even if you did a financial-based model, look at what the resource implications are and see if we can do it from a resource capacity perspective as well. So ultimately, the goal here is to select the right projects and devise portfolios that not only strategically align with the objectives, but also help maximize benefits within the constraints that we have. So we feed the optimization model. We can do things like force and make sure we have to do certain projects that are regulatory or things that must be done, and then model scenarios to compare alternative portfolios to see what works for us and what fits and gets us the right returns. And we can perform these ongoing portfolio optimizations as we go forward. The key here is that analysts over the years, even the Foresters, have said that organizations experience better strategic and organizational alignment with a PPM solution that supports the type of things that we're going to show you here today. And now, one of the benefits as a natural output of this is the analytics and reporting. One plan comes with a bunch of pre-built reports and report packs that are natively fed from the solution. And we leverage Power BI natively for this, but we have a bunch of pre-built reports that have a financial bent to them as part of the report pack. And we also have reporting at a variety of levels, whether it be portfolio level financials, whether it be program level financials, or even down to the individual project level. And the key is that getting the information in the right hands of the right people and the right audience, depending on their role in the project and portfolio management process. And we talked about integrations a little bit, and one plan has its own integration platform called OneConnect. And it allows us to connect to not only other work management tools that we talked about, like Azure DevOps and Jira and Microsoft Project, but also can connect to your financial systems, meaning our financial planning can be fed forward to the financial system, or for example, audited actuals that come from your financial system can be brought into the financial plans within one plan through this connector technology. So the key there is we can actually leverage a combination of both worlds, the PPM solution more real time for things that people are working with day to day, but as those actuals become available and audited from financials, bringing those in so that we can compare and see how we're doing. So with that, I will transition over to a demonstration. And where I'll start with the demonstration is in that whole area of strategy. I'm in the My Strategy area of one plan. And in here, if I expand this out, we have a model with objectives and key results. We have different objectives, like launch new products successfully. And within there's 3 tangible key results that we're trying to measure: create 20 customer case studies, get into the Gartner Magic Quadrant, win best product of the year. Some of the things that we're looking at, and then tracking current metrics on how we're doing on those things. And we can define these things as we want. Now, OKRs is a popular method today. If you have another method which you track and structure strategies, that's fine, because you can model that in here the way you like. Let's just say we drill into a particular objective, and the objective, you can determine what data points you capture. These forms and fields that you capture are completely configurable. So you can characterize the objective. You could talk about how we're doing on the current metrics. We can prioritize these things. We can even put maybe schedules and terms on these things and have descriptions on that. We can have a schedule about when we want to get this done. We can have financials when we talk about what we think it's going to cost us to do this, and maybe what the return of benefits and ROI could be calculated. We can also prioritize these things. The other important part that even is, gets really strong in this solution is that it can be associated with other portfolio elements from within the solution when we talk about strategic portfolio management. In this case, we're showing this particular objective, launch new product successfully, has 3 key results that it's associated with. And we can see how those 3 key results are doing. We can see that the current metrics, whether they're 33, 45%, or 75% achieved, maybe the status of whether they're at risk or on track, and those types of things are all available to us. But once again, this is configurable if you have your own metrics that you would like to track. And in here, let's just say I wanted to drill into one of those key results. It is associated with this, and this has its own set of metrics. So for example, it has its own characterizations, its alignment with this objective itself. It has a budget for this. It has a metric, which is a number, which is a target number of 20 case studies, of which we've achieved 10 of those. And the key there is that key result then could then be associated with different ideas, initiatives, products, applications, or other entities that you have within the solution. So in this particular case, if we're looking at the associated initiatives, we can see information like, what's the health of the overall initiative? I can also capture some information saying we have 3 initiatives or projects that are still proposed and not yet in flight that seem to be something that is going to be needed to achieve this key result of customer case studies. So we might want to look at whether or not we should streamline the approval process and get these things going so that we can succeed at this overall key result. We can even have things in here like when these things are going to finish, what the budgets are, what the prioritization score is on each of these projects or initiatives, and even how much they've been done as we go through this. So the idea here is that these associations into these key results or initiatives will help us understand how these things are aligned overall. Now, if I drill into a specific initiative, say, for example, on a project that this key result is associated with, as I come in here and look at the details for this particular project or initiative, I can get the information I need about how it's doing and then the management of that if I have access to this particular project. So for example, I've got the characterization data on how these things are classified and categorized within the system. I may have some business case information that came forward from the original business case when we justified the project. You might have the criteria that we use to basically derive a prioritization score on this. And then even have the individual schedule and the snapshot of even how we're doing on the overall financials, what our original budget was, what our new forecast is, how we're doing on these things, what's the projected ROI, et cetera. So there's financial snapshot at a high level for this type of information as we go on through. But as we go down here and we go into the, what we call the enterprise architecture elements in here, notice if it ties back to that key result that we looked at and came here from originally. So that's in there. But also notice we can do things like split budgets for these projects. So for example, maybe we want to split our budget allocation across multiple key results and have only a portion of the budget allocated to that as we charge forward and look at how we're going to allocate funds across the organization and how they relate to these initiatives and these strategies. We also have things like budget splits and other data fields you might want to capture in here. But this is all driven by, the dollars are, by a detailed financial plan that we have within the solution. So if we go into this particular project and we look at the financial plan for just this project, now I'm looking at a financial plan that I'm looking at the budget. In this budget, we've decided what our cost category structure is. We have a labor category that's broken into different roles. And we're looking at these things by months right now, but we can go in here and we can decide whether we want to look at it by months or quarters or years or different time frames or horizons that we want to look at. We can also then determine on the time phasing when those costs are going to be. We can also then categorize what elements of this might be capital versus operational, CapEx versus OpEx. And we can also do things like compare. So for example, if I look here, I have a budget, I might have a revised forecast, right? That after we lock the budget, we may be managing what the new information on the ground tells us. And we might even have actuals that either come from a combination of timesheets and our financial system that'll tell us what the actual costs in that have come in to date. And we can even track things like benefits, whether they be revenue or cost savings or other things that we want to structure in that benefit side of things. And you can have as many of these cost types, as we call them, as you want. You can configure more in here if you like. Now, on the budget side, I could be looking at this and I might want to compare. I might want to compare a budget to the forecast. And in this case, I can see in March, it looks like I am in certain areas, or overall, my revised forecast say I'm going to spend less. Does that mean I'm getting a slow start on this project, or am I having a good experience on that? And am I going to pay the piper later on in May because it's deferring costs I thought I was going to spend, but from a cash flow basis, it's going to hit me in May? The idea is we can compare budget versus forecast, budget versus actuals, or even look at them all together on the same screen and get good insights on how we're tracking against our original assumptions as we go. We can even use these types of views to group things up. So for example, if I wanted to group, say, the expense types or whatever other categorizations that I use, I could say, let me roll this up into how much of this is capital versus CapEx versus OpEx, and look at that from that perspective and roll that up into our projects and our programs. We can also add detail rows in here. So for example, if I have a software category and I wanted to maybe log in here additional detail, like a particular purchase order, particular purchase, and line item detail on that, I can have that entered in here and have that roll up to the major category that I want, and have that information roll up if I want to do that type of level of detail. So once again, you can do a lot of things in here to structure it the way that you want. Now, some of this, the labor pieces, you don't have to double enter. In this particular case, there is a resource capacity plan, and that resource capacity plan can be planned in terms of hours or percentages or FTEs. In this case, I'll leave it in hours. But the idea is, as you do this labor, and these labor elements are actually mapped to certain roles, you can have it actually automatically import into the financial plan from that resource plan and populate based on rates and the roll up of the roles, the dollars from that resource plan, without having to re-enter a labor-based financial plan in here. It saves a lot of time and effort. Now, there's also, as I talked about that bottom-up approach, we always have work plans in here in one plan. And from a work plan basis, I might come in here and look at, say, an individual schedule. And let me break that out. And I have a number of views, but now I'm in more of a cost view here. And you can plan on a task-by-task basis the individual costs or the resource assignments that you have in here, and have that roll up to total cost for a project from a bottoms-up task basis as well. And all this can roll back to the portfolio and roll up to get us that information that we need at the portfolio level across all of the projects and portfolios that we're working on. Now, we do have visualizations. I started talking about some associations, the associations of the objectives to the key results to the initiatives. And those initiatives could be aligned with a number of other elements in the system, depending on how much of the strategic portfolio management approach you take on. I can very easily come into a view, and I can get into a visualize mode, which is a relatively new capability that tells me a few things. From a dependency basis, I can tell that this plan's social networking integration has some predecessor plans that need to happen in order for us to do this or to achieve this. I also have another plan, team collaboration, that is dependent on this. So I can look at where it fits in the scheme of how it's related to other projects, as well as our runway view, which gives us a more detailed view of things that are required. So for example, as I look at, let me zoom out a little bit. And as I look into here, I can see that this social networking integration project ties back to the original strategy we came from, the launch project successfully and the create 20 customer case studies, but it also is aligned with another strategy and a key result over here. We can also see that there's 2 other products that it's associated with, and it's also 2 different applications that are related to this that need to be considered, as well as different business capabilities that are related as well as value streams. So as we get into complex interrelations, we have a way to visualize that very simply at any place within our system. Now, let's take this to the portfolio level and go back to what we'll show as the project portfolio. And in this particular case, you can structure this portfolio in a variety of ways. So if, for example, I wanted to get to a portfolio summary, here I have it, and if I expand this out, I have a portfolio that is broken down into programs within each portfolio. And then within those programs, I have projects and epics or different initiatives that are happening within those portfolios. If I go into the portfolio summary view, it's here that I can do some portfolio what ifs. and do some things from a prioritization basis. Say, for example, I came into here and I say I wanted to do a financial scenario. From whatever view that I'm in, I could come in here and take a look and say, here are the projects that we have on our plate, and this is our current portfolio capability and what if. I can overlay a target of a budget that we've entered in here to see that I have a target budget of just over 5 million, but the projects I have are going to require over $8.5 million to do. And from that, I could do a few things. I could, I could select projects. So let's say, for example, I'm in a priority ranked order here. I can come in and start deselecting projects that we may decide are lower priority. And notice that it adjusts the cost down here until, from a selection basis, we might whittle this down to something that's closer to our budget number. We could also do things like take some proposed projects that we have in here and say, you know, maybe we can't do this now. Maybe we got to delay this out a few quarters and look at the adjustment on something like that. And we can do it a combination of, you know, selection and deselection based on priorities. We can do something of time phasing or sequencing of our projects, all to get closer and fit within this. Now, in this model here within the portfolio that we've had all along, we can save these as different scenarios, and we can evaluate those scenarios and discuss them with other people and look at and see if they're viable alternatives for us to pursue. So within that, we can do a variety of different things. You know, I could go into different views to look at what if analysis. So for example, if I go into here and say, let me go into a different view that maybe shows some of the alignment we have with the objectives and the key results. So here, notice that I've got fields for the prioritization. I've got fields for what key results are associated with what projects, right? And let's say I want to filter on a particular key result. So to stay consistent with where we've been, let me filter this portfolio down to, let's see, create 20 customer case studies. And if I click off of that, I've now got this down to just the projects that are associated with that. If I'm looking at the context of how much we're spending to make this go and whether or not we can make this happen, there's a few things I might want to consider here. One, with the budget, I can see that within my $5 million budget, almost $2 million of that is going to be taken up by projects and initiatives that are needed to happen in order to achieve that associated key result. I can also see, like I saw up in the strategic area, that 2 of them are still proposed and we haven't even started on those things yet. And we probably need to factor those things in as we go through. And for example, if we didn't do one aspect of this, what does it do to the cost, for example? And it dynamically changes those things. And once again, we can save these different scenarios. I could call this the customer case study scenario or whatever it might be, and save as many of those scenarios as I like. So those are just some high-level capabilities we have in here and how they can align back with the strategic elements within the solution. Now, the new thing I introduced was about the modeler, and this takes it to another level. The modeler is a capability that sits outside of the portfolio, but allows us to do some additional modeling capabilities. And some of it's similar, but some of it takes it to another level. So for example, let's just say, and I wanted to just access some, and notice I have different models in here. Some are for IT, some are for product development, some are for marketing, where you can have as many different delineations of models that you want to create. In this particular case, I'm going to go into the IT 2022 planning model. And in that model, there was a selection of projects. And if I came in here and I'm going to look at one that was already done here, where let's just say we originally were targeting a $20 million budget. And what we did in here was establish a $20 million budget and a target or a constraint. And within it, we're looking at, you know, that budget of $20,000. We've got a spend here on the projects that fall under that $20 million, 19.7, right? That's not going to get us the full $50 million in benefits we were thinking we were going to get. It's basically going to get us about $43 million in benefits by getting those things. And notice it's telling me which projects are in based upon this constraint and the prioritization scores, but also notice what's out and what hasn't made it out of the selection in this model that we thought we were going to have candidates for this project. So all along, it's going to tell us along what it is that we can and can't do based upon the constraints that we have. Now, we might have another model that we put in here in another scenario where we say, well, what if we could find another $5 million? What if we could, get $25 million? What would that do for us? As I load that scenario, it's going to show to me that for another, basically almost maybe another $4 million in spend, I'm going to get about another $5 to $6 million in benefit. It might be worth us to find the money for the returns that we're going to get if we can somehow lay our hands on that budget. We can also have things like committed effort and other things that we set as targets is what we'd like to have. But the key here is that we can do this independently. We can do this as individual models. We can put constraints. And then on top of that, we can start comparing these. So now I've done these two different models telling me that the $20 million budget let me do 79 projects for $5 million more. I get 96 projects in the in category. And it looks like for the total budget, the benefits that I would achieve would be actually $10 million more for another $5 million in spend. It might be worth me go finding that money to go do that. And the idea is I can review these models with others in the organization. So this is exciting. We've just released this modeler capability and it's available for evaluation and we'd love feedback on that. So we're excited about it because it's something that our customers have been asking for, and it provides a lot of flexibility on how to evaluate alternatives. I guess the last piece is that I go back to the portfolio and I want to look at reporting around all this. As I mentioned, we have a native feed an OData feed that feeds a set of report packs that we've pre-developed for our customers. Now, you can use these reports, you can modify these reports, you can add reports of your own to this. And we can do things like look at, say a financial summary or financial health reports. Rolling together all the financials. And in our portfolio and program structure in this particular model, I might want to go in and say, what are the financials for this particular portfolio? Oops. So I can look at, for different portfolio summaries. So here, for example, I've got an overall portfolio summary where I have two portfolios that I'm managing. And I could basically go in here, what's the cloud and mobile first, and select that in the graphic here and look at the values around that. And I can use different slicers, and these can be slicers that you have for the way you categorize things. I can also drill in where I come into here and look at, say, portfolio details. And in the portfolio details, I'm now looking at the individual program values that were in those portfolios and look at the overview around that. And within a particular program, I can maybe drill into that and look at program details where I start getting into the individual projects and initiatives that are within those, and look at things like KPIs, financials, and other data around that. Even get down to just individual status with red, yellow, greens, or maybe detailed financial information around those projects and initiatives that are within this. And the idea here is you get this as a natural output of work in the system and putting the data into one plan. I would say this, the cost details, as we get into the financial planner, as you want to break this thing down, we can even get reports and roll-ups based upon what's budget versus actual or budget versus forecast, or even roll this up by capital and expense and that type of thing. So the key there is that the financial reporting aligned with your strategy is something that we get out of the system as a natural output. So with that, let's go summarize. So what we've shown today is that financial management is a critical success factor for PPM success. And costs need to be planned, estimated, budgeted, and tracked to really achieve overall project success. And many organizations, unfortunately, are still using disconnected spreadsheets and manual processes that aren't connected with the rest of the project and strategy process. Now, one plan provides a great platform for all these PPM capabilities and provides visibility in a central organization-wide view of projects, programs, and portfolios. But it also enhances all aspects of your top-down financial planning and analysis, as we've shown with the financial planning and the portfolio level visibility into all that. And it also helps us align our financial plans and our initiatives with organization strategies to make sure that we're properly aligned and working on the right things. It also gives us consistent financial information across a diverse set of methodologies and tools. It doesn't matter if the tasks in that plan are being managed in an agile fashion, a waterfall fashion, a hybrid fashion. These will be a consistent method for doing this across your entire organization. And OnePlan is fully integrated and embedded in the Microsoft Cloud, meaning if you're a Microsoft shop, we authorize and we authenticate into this using your existing Azure Active Directory, and it fits right into your existing ecosystem. Also, I mentioned briefly that it integrates with existing financial applications. If you want to bring that data to and from financials, we have that connector capability to do that. Now, OnePlan does this because our passion is project and portfolio management. Now, we have a number of different gold certifications from Microsoft, but where we focus the majority of our time, the vast majority of our time, is in project and portfolio management. And that's evidenced by Microsoft. They named us their global PPM leader 3 of the last 4 years, and the 1 year we didn't get it, we were the finalist. And so we were awarded again that designation just recently here for 2022. And not only were we recognized by Microsoft in doing these things, but also the analysts like Gartner and Infotech Research, as well as folks like the SaaS Awards, who named us the best SaaS product for project management out there. Now, we do webinars like this all the time, roughly weekly. We miss one here or there, but we're currently planning our next ones. They're not yet posted, but if you go to oneplan.ai/webinars, you can look at a rich library of on-demand webinars that we've already done. And if you like what you see here today, there's other topic areas that you might want to take a look at. And the live webinars will be posted here as well. You may get an email invitation because you've already been to one, but if not, you can go here at any different time to see the upcoming live webinars that you can register for. Now, if you like what you see here today and you want to get hands-on, we do have free trials up on AppSource. If you go to appsource.com and you search on OnePlan, I would strongly recommend, if you like what you saw here today, that you use the strategic portfolio management template, but we have different variations of templates out there. But if you want the all-encompassing one, the strategic portfolio management one is the one to go with. We also offer free roadmap workshops. So if you're not quite to that point, but you want to understand how you'd get from where you are into something like this, we can work with you to review your current use of solutions and tools, assess your current requirements and desired future state of where you'd like to get to, and put together some information on what it would take to get there, and also understand that you may already own some of the things that you already need if you're a Microsoft shop, for example, so that we can get an idea of what it would take to do that. And we can do this for you on a free complimentary basis. So there's the free trial, there's the roadmap workshop, and even if you're not ready to do either of those things, we gave a generalized demonstration today. If you'd like a more personalized demonstration that is geared towards your use cases, your requirements, your pain points, reach out to us at contact@oneplan.ai, and we're happy to set you up with that. If you want to learn more, just go to www.oneplan.ai. A lot of information about our solutions. Overall, I just want to thank you all for spending time with us today. Our motto is that we're invested in success, and by that means we're invested in our customer success. Feel free to reach out to the general contact email, or if you want to reach out to me directly, you can do that as well. We really do want to engage with you. Our passion is about making people successful and moving the ball forward for them and their organizations. Thank you, and have a great day.